Welcome to Business by Nature. Here we talk all things women, business, and nature. When the world is telling us to do it one way, what happens when we do it our own way? I'm Alina Pazis, and on this show, I'm interviewing female entrepreneurs and teaching about earth processes to show you what it actually looks and feels like to run a business based on your deepest passions and beliefs. Hello, welcome to the podcast. I am Alina, your host, and this episode is my musings on the recent podcast that has come out called the Telepathy Tapes. This is my psychic autistics perspective on the Telepathy Tapes. So, to introduce myself, I am Alina, and I am autistic, and I am psychic. Or rather, I would say that's the best word we have to describe what I would say these abilities are. So this podcast is my perspective on the trailblazing podcast that has recently come out called the Telepathy Tapes, which is a podcast all about nonverbal autistics and their telepathic abilities, which is now, through that lens, it's expanding the understanding of our consciousness. It's going beyond what we would call telepathy. It's an amazing podcast, and if you haven't listened to it, I recommend you do, if anything that I said inspired you. I think that the person who started it is called Dickens. Let me just double check because I want to make sure I get Kai's name correctly. Yeah, Dickens. And Kai has done an amazing job. This podcast brings you through, the Telepathy Tapes brings you into this world at a pace that is understandable and digestible, and the storytelling is really well done. And there's snippets of conversations from the different interviews and testing moments. And so you really feel like you're inside of this experience that's being unveiled to all of us. So I'm a big fan of the Telepathy Tapes. And I have some things to say about it as well. It's not wowing me in the same way that it's wowing other people, not because of anything about how it's produced, just literally the subject matter is not wowing me while it's wowing other people. So a little about me to just give you reference before we dive in. I was born in Northern California in the foothills. And I spent most of my childhood growing up in Asia, and my parents taught at international schools. I was stared at anytime I was outside of my home or school for 14 years, a lot for an autistic person. I attended UC Berkeley, and I got my degree in physical geography, GIS map making, and dance. Yes, we got some well-rounded something or other over here. I would say that I have a very smart mind. I have a very intelligent mind, which can get you quite far in this world, which is nice. And I also realized in my late 20s that I can connect to unseen energies. And this is where I think we'd use the word psychic, because we don't have much language for this. I think psychic is a very overused term, and I think it's a very actually unclear term. I'm going to say unseen, connecting to the unseen realm, because that's, I think, a way to indicate that me or someone else is connecting to something that that's very real, but we're not looking at it with our eyes. Of course, someone else with these abilities in their way, they might literally be seeing something. It shows up so different for so many people. So here I am at 33. I know I'm psychic. I'll just use that word for the moment. And I am just realizing that I am autistic, and suddenly so much more is making sense in life. Literally, thousands of aspects of my life have been explained when I figured out that I was autistic. Clearly, my masking and coping skills have gotten so remarkably good that no therapist, mentor, or teacher ever thought I might be autistic. Um, yeah, all of my autistic qualities had just gotten written off. And a good friend of mine who is also autistic, she said to me once, "Oh, of course, Alina. No one caught it because you were smart and hot, and no one pays attention to the struggles of smart and hot people, especially not women." And I laughed, but I think she really made a point. And of course, hot is a very subjective term. Um, and it's always kind of a funny thing, to talk about if it's yourself. But although I don't consider myself a super hot person, I do consider myself someone who is in their body and who has a nice shape. And enough people look my way based on my face uh, that it's clear that I, at times, have gotten grouped into a hot, pretty, sexy category, which is actually so interesting to say because it even just saying it, and I'm just so aware that that has been so often how people are relating to me of any gender. And I even just feeling my autistic self and just noticing how often I have just been trying to communicate as myself, and instead these, we all get projections put on us, but it is really interesting the projection of like beauty or sexiness or embodiedness and the things that come with that. So, side tangent, but I think an important one. So, here I am. I run my own business. I have been quite successful in most things, pretty much all things that I have pursued. I'm very tenacious, and if I'm committed to something, I will really figure it out. And I also, at any time, can pop behind this veil of what we see, and I can talk to the spirit of pretty much anything, so long as it's interested in talking back to me. These are very different qualities in a person. And the smart side of me, the intelligent side of me, gets noticed often and has. This psychic side of me is, I make a point of trying to talk about it in a fairly normalized way. But even then, it's not something I bring up that often, mostly because I'm tired of the other side of the conversation, um, just not just having so many opinions about it, having so many negative opinions about it. So it's just the autistic in me does not like having to feel everyone else's feelings all the time because I can feel everything. So I just don't bring it up that much. But I do talk about it, and I talk about it in my work, and I use it with my clients. And this is where I get so much of the information that helps me with my clients. I work with them around business, and yet all of these things that are coming in from energies they're connected with and things in the unseen realm are informing so much of their path. And I'm also able to help work behind these scenes and clear anything that is ready to go. So, first, I just want to throw down a tip. If you have any of these abilities as well, a tip that I learned from my teacher, Melissa Seaman, and she learned it and from her teacher, Maria Yesburu. Every time I'm working with the unseen realms, I just set the intention of only whatever is in the highest good. Because the unseen realms are vast, vast. And there's you have to, just like if you were going through a very giant crowd, you need to be able to not talk to everything, know where you're going. If someone strikes up a conversation with you, being able to judge in that moment, like, do I want to be talking to this person? Does this feel good? Does this feel part of my journey through this crowd, or is this not something I want to be doing? It's the same thing. It's like you're having all these conversations, you're just having them in a different realm. So I love this tip, setting the intention of only whatever's in the highest good, because it has this part of my brain calm down. Um, and so I'm gonna start diving into the telepathy tapes here. So when the telepathy tapes came out, I had a variety of friends reach out to me and send it my way, because clearly autism, psychic abilities, and the expansion of human consciousness are all totally up my alley. So I found, though, that while everyone else is getting totally wowed by the remarkable material in these podcast episodes, I am not wowed. I am like, yep, correct. Yeah, sounds right. Right on track. Like, it just feels like no big deal over here. And so I just felt like it was important to put some voice to this. So my biggest takeaways from this Telepathy Tapes podcast. One is that I am so impressed with the souls that incarnated as nonverbal autistics in this day and age that are the ones that are leading to these discoveries. Because, wow, that is a gracious soul. A soul that has come in and signed up to be thought less than, ridiculed, even if internally. Like, even if people aren't saying verbally to them anything outwardly ridiculing, our entire inward perspective in this culture is, oh, whoa, there's something wrong over there. There's something messed up over there. Even with, as a neurodiverse person, even just reading modern literature on autism or ADHD, the whole perspective is this kind of awful disability. Even people who are writing in, attempting to be generous or looking at it through a slightly positive lens, the language is still terrible. And this is very mild compared to someone who truly is not even able to speak in the way that the rest of us are speaking and interacting. So these people are made to feel less than. The podcast does an amazing job explaining how so many doctors and specialists have been saying to parents of these children, your kids aren't in there. This is kind of like a lifeless form. Okay, so to be a very intelligent being with a consciousness far beyond most people's at the moment, and everyone around you is looking down at you. What a gracious soul. What a gracious soul. And I think it's only by people who look so unfunctional according to our modern standards. It's almost like we're only going to take telepathy or expanded consciousness. It's like we'll only really believe it when it's when that level of intelligence, it's coming from someone who we wrote off, who society wrote off. Because yeah, we haven't taken it seriously yet. And I'm thinking, like, this podcast is making the waves, and what and who are the people behind it all? Like, who are these souls? What lives have they lived? And what gifts, what challenging lives have they lived, but what amazing gifts are they providing humanity with? So again, I just say, in my mind, these are incredibly gracious souls. And with that, I do also think that people who are not speaking verbally, they don't really need to speak verbally if they're tapped into these other aspects of consciousness that most of us aren't experiencing. It's like, why talk? And that's one of the things that these people, these children are saying in the podcast is they're like, yeah, like why do I need to talk? Why can't other people just read my mind? Like, come on, let's go. And I loved that because one of the things that kind of gets me about this podcast, even though I have so much respect um, and so much gratitude for the people that created it, and these moments in the podcast where anyone says to one of these nonverbal autistic children or adults, like, good job, wow, that was great. That would be like you enthusiastically congratulating me because I tied my shoe. I'm like, yeah, of course I can freaking tie my shoe. Of course I can tap into my mom's brain and tell you that she's looking at the number 5. Like, for that person, that's really quite basic. And here we are just like wowing and applauding, and I get it. And it's also just, to me, like quite demeaning. So, yep, there's that one. And as someone who, I mean, my gifts are very different. And I do think that, well, I think many things, but basically, a lot of people that have these gifts of tapping into unseen worlds, the fact that there's so much speculation that these producers of the podcast are pointing out, and even the producers of the podcast had a fair amount of skepticism at the beginning. Um, it's just this kind of hard spot in the heart, because luckily I am able to talk to people with my words and fit in society. But there's this massive part of me that I'll call the psychic part, the part that can tap into these invisible places, that I don't really get to talk about that much except with certain people. And even people then, I feel like I have to use my language quite carefully. Um, it's quite lonely. And then to be reminded that the entire world is just completely skeptical, and really will only take this at face value, possibly in such an extreme circumstance as this is. I mean, I think for other people, I can see the lens where this is also hopeful in the world, but it's all, as someone who has a different version of some of these, it's sad, and yeah, sore in the heart. It gives my heart a sore tenderness. Um, yeah, these gifts that are coming through to me are such a sign that humanity is evolving and changing, and people with autism, it's so looked at as a disability or a shame. But clearly it's coming with these remarkable aspects to it. And even in my limited kind of scientific researching of what we as a society do know about the autistic brain, I've just been quite fascinated by some of the things that I've come across, which one of which is that autistic brains don't prune themselves in the same way as other brains. And so they end up just holding like more and more information and become quite web-like, which, reminds me of the mycelial network. And also that I read something about like their synapses firing even faster. And I've experienced this one myself. It's like my body, my physical body and my neurology doesn't keep up with the speed at which I want to say my brain, but it maybe isn't even my brain. I would say my body can't keep up with the level, like the speed of intelligence that's going through. So I'll be laying there and my body and even a part of my brain are fairly kind of comatose. So that's like a very exaggerated word, but like quite unfunctional. Like I can't get up and do things. I'm pretty out. Mind you, this is not sleepy or tired. It's just like I can't really function. And meanwhile, this intelligence in me will be going a mile a minute and coming up with tons of new ideas and very smart things and thinking through problems. And yet I can't act on any of them in these, let's call them depressive states. And it's yeah, to me, it feels as if this evolution in humanity, we're in this point where the consciousness and intelligence coming through us is not in a trial and error period, is in a play around period with the biology and neurology of our bodies. And I think amazing things are happening and are going to happen. And we're in like any kind of awkward growth state. I think that's where we are. So to sum it up, I am so grateful this podcast, The Telepathy Tapes, exists. And it's a bit tender in my heart that it's taking something as dramatic as this for any of these gifts to be taken seriously. And I also very much agree with the message from the Telepathy Tapes that through the lens of these nonverbal autistic people and their gifts, we are seeing and pointing to new horizons of consciousness that do not surprise me, although they very much surprise other people. But that I am excited that by so many people listening to this podcast, there may start to be more shared language and legitimacy for a lot of experiences that a lot of us are having.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Business by Nature podcast. If you did, please rate it wherever you tune in and share it with a friend so more entrepreneurs learn that business and nature are not at odds. The more we see business as a creative act of nature, the more ease and natural growth we experience. To learn more specifically how to work with nature in your business, take our potent quiz to uncover your unique force of nature so you can stop fighting it and start harnessing it. Go to forceofnaturequiz.com to get your results in 2 minutes. If you're ready to up-level your business according to your nature, Our Business by Nature Power Session is the best starting place. You can find this and more intensive programs at businessbynature.com. For more insights, humor, and highlights, join us over on Instagram at Business by Nature.